Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself." Forests are the lungs of our land, purifying the air and giving fresh strength to our people. Why is it important to take care of the earth? The most obvious reason is that the earth is our home. It provides shelter, food, oxygen, water, and other items essential to health, quality of life, and survival for humans, plants, and animals alike. It is incredible that the earth is able to provide for all of our needs, and yet we take its resources, beauty, and life for granted. In this documentary, we will discover the natural beauty and wonder of the earth, take a look at how global climate change is forever altering the world we live in, and then delve into ways we can take action to combat these changes. We take so much from the earth every day. We use the earth endlessly and need to give it a chance to rest. We are constantly using the earth's resources, from the wood we get from the forest to the water in the lakes we drink. We chop down her forests to make room for houses and shopping centres, and poison her air with our smog and chemicals produced from consumption. Shouldn't we be a little more concerned with how we are treating the earth? Every action we take affects the web of life. Life on Earth is a large chain of reactions, all connected to one another, from the plants in the soil and the animals that soar in the sky, swim in the ocean, and wander in the forest, to the air that we breathe. Everything in the world affects one another and is crucial to our everyday lives. We are all interconnected, and everything we do affects the earth. The earth provides many services that benefit the humans, plants, and animals that live on her planet. Forests remove carbon dioxide and other pollutants from the air. Earth's wetlands store stormwater, as well as filter the water to get rid of pollutants, making water safer to drink. Wetlands also help recharge our aquifers, where most of the planet gets their drinking water with these filtered waters. The dune systems on Earth's many beaches form natural barriers to protect against the water's currents and storms and provide important habitats for wildlife. The prairies help control erosion and help anchor the soil into the ground to prevent runoff and rainwater from flowing into other water bodies. Runoff gets into larger water bodies and affects the drinking water. Prairies also provide carbon sequestration, which aids in storing carbon or carbon dioxide underneath the ground and in the soil. This helps reduce humans' environmental impact. Our lovely Earth provides so many amazing services to keep her inhabitants safe, healthy, and secure that we often take for granted. Why don't we take better care of the place where we live? The Earth is a place where animals, humans, and plants can coexist and live together. It really is just a large home for everyone. You wouldn't leave garbage around your house or destroy your bedroom without planning to rebuild it. So why should people treat the Earth that way, especially when other animals and plants live on it too? If we live by the golden rule, treat others the way you would like to be treated, shouldn't that apply to the Earth as well as humans? The answer is, of course. We should not want to dirty the Earth, because then our home would be dirty. Another reason why taking care of the Earth is important is health. A clean environment is essential for healthy living for humans, plants, and animals. Air pollution can cause respiratory diseases and cancer due to the inhalation of all the harmful chemicals and smog from factories. Water pollution can lead to typhoid, diarrheal diseases, and other waterborne and water-related diseases due to the intake of bacteria and parasites. In many parts of the world, sources of drinking water are polluted. This is a major cause of diseases and death around the world. The mining of natural resources such as coal has led to increased risk of cancer, birth defects in unborn children, respiratory tract illnesses, and many other health concerns. We can mitigate these risks by deciding to take care of the Earth. How can we do that? We can help combat air pollution by driving less and biking, walking, carpooling, or taking public transit more often. Choose a more fuel-efficient car. Recycle. Set the thermostat to a lower temperature and compost food scraps instead of placing them in the garbage. Water pollution can be improved by reducing the use of fertilizers and pesticides on lawns and gardens. Use environmentally friendly cleaning products. And don't throw trash in the rivers, lakes, or other bodies of water. Notice what you flush down the toilet and only flush things that should be flushed. Little steps can make a big impact. We should also care about the environment so that future generations may also enjoy the same quality of life that we enjoy currently. Do you like to have picnics or ride your bike? Do you play sports outside or sunbathe in the summer? Do you enjoy the birds chirping in the spring and the smell of fresh cut grass or burning leaves in the fall? Most people love being outside, enjoying the sun and breathing fresh air. If we do not take care of the environment, the world will be a much different place for our grandchildren or even our own children. Future generations may not be able to play outside because of low air quality and smog resulting from too much CO2 in the air. They may not be able to enjoy wandering through a forest because we had all the trees cut down. Little things in life that we often take for granted may not be there for future people. Children in China are already forced to stay inside due to dangerous and toxic smog levels, which affects their livelihood and their health. It is so sad to think that these children will never be able to truly experience playing outside, climbing trees, or making mud pies, all because of the air pollution and smog in China. In 2014, the Carteret Islanders of Papua New Guinea became the world's first community to be displaced by climate change. Sea levels had risen so much from the warming climate and the melting of ice caps that the water threatened to overtake their homes and ruin their crops. In 2015, the island they called home was completely underwater. To think that climate change has destroyed so many homes and lives is repulsive. While this may not have been entirely prevented, there were surely actions we could have taken to mitigate the risks. But still we consume. Humans are destroying habitats and decreasing biodiversity, the variety of animals, plants, and the other living organisms on Earth. We are getting rid of many diverse environments to make room for the ever-increasing population. Tropical forests have already lost between 80 to 90% of their trees, resulting from deforestation. Future generations may not get to enjoy learning about and observing nature's abundant wild animals. Wouldn't you want that for our children and grandchildren? The CO2 we are dispelling into the air is making parts of our world unlivable. Parts of the world have already become too hot for human inhabitants due to changing weather patterns and increasing heat waves from CO2 levels. A recent study conducted by the American Climate Prospectus predicted that the number of dangerous heat events experienced by Americans each year will rise from a baseline of 4, the average number during the period from 1981 to 2020, to about 10 in the year 2030, and then to 35 by the year 2090. Scientists warn that climate change will lead to longer and hotter heat waves. The world has found this to be true in many instances. It is predicted that by the end of the century, the Persian Gulf will experience extreme temperatures that will make survival near impossible. In 1998, a heatwave scorched Chicago and was the main cause of death for over 700 people. In May of 2015, India suffered an extreme heat wave, with temperatures reaching upwards of 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which was responsible for the deaths of around 2,500 people across many regions of India. Are we going to let our carbon emissions affect the livelihood of hundreds of other people? We definitely shouldn't. We should fight for our fellow humans and take our actions and their consequences seriously. But first, let's look at how humans are harming the Earth. Humans harm the Earth in many ways. Deforestation, or cutting down large portions of forests, affect animal habitats, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. Hundreds of animals rely on trees for shelter, food, and other aspects of survival. Trees provide berries, leaves, and bark, which can be eaten by a plethora of animals. Trees also soak up some of the CO2 in the air and dispel oxygen for humans to breathe. Without trees, there may be little oxygen, and the life of humanity will be threatened. As we cannot live without oxygen, we can also say that we cannot live without trees. The roots of trees act as natural water filters as water flows through forested areas on its way to meet the stream, river, or lake. Most of the water we consume comes from public lakes or rivers, and although we filter the water before it can be consumed by masses, the trees help to rid the water of some impurities. This helps keep animals and humans alive and safe. Almost everything we do produces carbon dioxide or CO2. What is CO2? CO2 is a colorless, odorless, non-toxic gas that is dispelled into the atmosphere from a variety of actions, both human and natural. From driving to the store to farming and harvesting crops emits CO2. Manufacturing food, printing paper, taking the elevator, and leaving the lights and water on produces great quantities of CO2. Transportation is responsible for most of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Vehicles such as cars, trains, planes, and boats release CO2, which contributes to global warming. In total, the US transportation sector, which includes planes, trains, ships, and freight, produces around 30% of all US global warming emissions. That's much more than most countries. In 2011, the countries that produced the most carbon dioxide were China, the United States, the European Union, India, the Russian Federation, Japan, and Canada. The CO2 came mostly from the burning of fossil fuels. According to a recent study in the academic journal Science, it was found that carbon dioxide levels are at historic heights, hovering around 400 parts per million, a level scientists warn is radically altering the Earth's atmosphere and oceans. Some 46,000 to 58,000 square miles of forests are felled each year. Species are going extinct at a rate more than 100 times faster than has occurred historically. And fertilizer use, which has boosted agricultural yields, has also reached an all-time high, but when carried by wind or water into rivers and oceans, makes them uninhabitable for aquatic species. We need to take a hard look at our carbon emissions and come up with a plan of action to reduce our CO2. The average amount of CO2 we emit each day is called our carbon footprint. If we were to eat meat every day, drive all over town to work, the gym, the store, and to town, and then watch TV with all the lights on, our carbon footprint would be pretty high. However, if we rode our bike to work or carpooled, ate food that was locally grown, and turned the lights and water off when we were done using them, our carbon footprint would be lower. According to Carbon Fund, 40% of the average American's carbon footprint is due to their direct energy use. The other 60% is indirect. It comes from everything we buy and use, goods and services. Many of us are not aware of just how many emissions we are putting into the atmosphere. It is important to remember that every little thing we can do to lower our emissions can and does make a difference. Even by walking or carpooling to locations when we can, using less hot water, and considering the environmental impact when you print, can all help reduce our CO2 emissions and help the environment. In lieu of buying coffee from a fancy coffee shop every morning, brew our own coffee at home in a reusable mug. Unplug our microwave, lamps, and other objects when they are not in use. Read a book in the light of a lamp instead of spending every night in the white glow of the TV. Shopping local instead of at large chain stores or buying fresh fruits and vegetables from a farmer's market can also help reduce the CO2 in the air. There are many changes we can all make to mitigate the effects of climate change. All of these small changes can add up to make a larger difference. Why wouldn't people not feel the need to lessen their environmental impact? Most people take nature for granted and don't care about recycling or the carbon emissions they funnel out of their gas tanks because they don't think that it will affect them. Not doing anything is just as bad as causing the pollution in the first place. Even if it doesn't seem to make a difference, making little changes, such as recycling paper instead of throwing it in the trash, or deciding to carpool to work, can add up in the long run. The environment is a very precious part of our lives. If we ruin it, it's not going to magically become better again. It's up to us to fix the damage we've done, and people need to start doing something now. It would be easy to say, stop putting so much CO2 into the atmosphere, but the truth is that many people would not listen. CO2 is convenient and easy. Would humans want to stop driving vehicles, eating meat, and bathing with hot water altogether? Of course not. We need to figure out a way to do things in a sustainable manner. Other forms of energy, like wind energy, can generate electricity without emitting CO2. Studies by the New York Independent System Operator, Synapse Energy Economics, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory suggest that increased renewable energy generation has the potential to save the American ratepayers tens of billions of dollars a year over the current mix of electric power options. This does not mean this transition will be without costs, such as upgrading infrastructure, training people for these new jobs, and retiring existing power plants, but rather that the benefits to US consumers potentially outweigh these costs. Studies all show that renewable energy cuts costs system-wide by replacing power plants that are expensive to operate, mainly due to fossil fuel expenses. A study by the New York Independent System Operator showed that adding 8 gigawatts of wind capacity in the state of New York by 2018 would save $1.3 billion in power plant operation costs per year, roughly $65 per person served. The trend is clear. The United States is moving towards cleaner power generation, with renewable energy at the forefront. EPA's new regulations will help accelerate this transition, continue the reduction in US carbon emissions, and offer customers hundreds of dollars in savings annually compared to the cost of continuing to run the current power plant fleet. Hopefully this trend will continue, and the United States will continue to invest in renewable energy sources. We have developed hybrid cars to reduce our dependency on oil and engineered solar-powered lights to power streetlights, fans, and even homes to reduce our use of natural gas. Both natural gas and oil made from coal are non-renewable resources, which means that there is a limited supply. We acquire gas, coal, and other resources through drilling and fracking, the act of injecting water, sand, and chemicals into the shale rocks deep into the ground to crack open and release the natural gas within. But these methods of acquiring these resources are merely temporary. Sustainable energy is achievable. We just need to decide to make it a priority. So why don't humans take care of the Earth? Why aren't people more concerned? One main reason is technological utopianism, the idea that technology will solve all of our and Earth's problems. Technology is becoming more and more advanced with each passing day. Discoveries and advancements in all fields, such as health, science, media, and engineering, are being made all the time. These often help move research along, but can have negative effects on society. In a Time mobility poll, it was found that over 84% worldwide say they couldn't go a single day without their mobile device in their hand, and that 75% of 25 to 29-year-olds took their phones to bed. It was also found that 20% of respondents check their phone every 10 minutes. We are totally, hopelessly addicted, so much so that there is now even a term for a fear of losing our phones. nomophobia, and it's on the rise. Is it safe to be addicted to our phones or technology in general? Email, iPads, laptops, and smartphones dominate our modern world. Our uber-connected lives have made us virtually available at any time, at any place. From the movies, restaurants, during church, at traffic lights, to our kid's birthday party, and even during Christmas. This addiction to being connected and to technology is definitely not healthy and just encourages us to go through life without actually noticing it or caring about the world and environment around us. Some of us assume that technology can and will solve every problem we have. Technology has made strides in providing clean drinking water to needful countries. Mapping software helps detect food deserts, and providing greater access to education, along with hundreds of other improvements globally. For the most part, technology helps make our lives easier. Our calendars are on our cell phones. Our lights have the ability to automatically switch on when we want them to, and we can pay most of our bills online without any hassle. Are we that confident in technology that we believe that technology can save the human race from climate change? We cannot assume that technology can suck the CO2 out of the atmosphere or provide new homes for all of the animals displaced from globalization. Technology cannot provide the entire world with fresh water if there is none to spare. Technology cannot regrow trees as fast as we are chopping them down. It is time for us to take action. Why do we often choose not to act when we see the Earth and her inhabitants being harmed? In a recently published study, it was found that there are 3 social narratives that prevent people from acting on the information they have regarding the negative effects on the environment. Strategic realism, the notion that oil production is good because it supports economic security. Eco-apocalypse, our incapacity to act on knowledge we have. And technological utopianism, which we already discussed. We rationalize that oil and the consumption of fossil fuels is good for the economy, and who doesn't want a strong economy? Using oil is not inherently bad for the environment in and of itself. The carbon dioxide that gets expelled is bad for the environment. Burning oil produces waste products and pollutants and promotes fossil fuel consumption, which, particularly for oil, is not very energy efficient. However, we have yet to find a way to make nuclear plants or solar energy technology very efficient. When trying to figure out what is environmentally friendly, there's a lot of related processes that need to be considered. We need to ask the question, what is sustainable? What can keep the future of the world going? Is there enough coal in the world to last another 1,000 years? Can solar power be harnessed? Can plastic be recycled and manufactured from natural resources and materials that can be replenished naturally? It is only with these questions that society may start to realize that the amount of daily consumption, especially of fossil fuels, is unsustainable and negatively affecting us and our home. And the last reason why humans don't act on the environmental injustices of the world is simply because we do not know how to act. We do not know what to do with the information we have been given, yet to not act is the same as choosing to act. If we do not act, the world will continue as it currently operates. If we act, there is a huge possibility for change. Are people scared of change? Is it inconvenient? Do we think the change is not worth it? The only way to get involved in change is to learn about it and jump right in. Join an environmental activism club, take a class, and visit a local nature center or preserve. Immerse in nature and learn about the way the world operates. The more we become involved in nature, the more we will see the reason to help save it. The good news is that environmental awareness and activism is growing. According to a 2014 report appearing in the China Daily titled "Protecting Environment Tops Public Concern in Poll," about 60% of Chinese want the government to give priority to environmental protection when boosting economic growth. 83% of respondents said their cities have smog, and about 1/3 said that smog is serious. In 7 cities, Beijing, Harbin, Hefei, Nanjing, Shanghai, Wuhan, and Zhengzhou, up to 60% of their citizens thought the smog in their cities was serious. Regarding its impact on their lives, 63% said that they reduced unnecessary trips, and about 72% said that they reduced their outdoor activities. This level of concern matches what we see in Europe, Japan, and the US. An article written in the Huffington Post states, "When people experience a damaged environment, it changes their view of the world. They understand ecological interconnectedness, or what Barry Commoner once termed, everything must go somewhere." This has nothing to do with environmentalism or ideology. People know that we are stressing the planet's finite resources. Young people know it more than old people because they have grown up and been educated during the environmental era. The younger generation has grown up in the mess of the earth. They have seen the effects of climate change, oil spills, and severe weather patterns firsthand. They have witnessed food deserts, droughts, and smog. In the world we live in now, it is easier to see the results of climate change, not just because the results are accentuated, but because we were taught to be more aware of them. People are starting to change their behaviors based on environmental impact. In a study regarding water conservation, 60% of respondents declared that they turn off the faucet while brushing their teeth. Recycling efforts are up over 80% from the 1980s. We are starting to think about the cleanliness of our air, the impact our carbon emissions have on the environment, and which bin to place our trash or food waste into. While it is far from universal, more and more people understand that we need to sustainably manage our planet's resources and ecosystems. In the 2014 Cone Communications Food Issue Trend Tracker Survey, it was found that 77% of Americans consider the impact of their purchase on the environment and sustainability when purchasing food. This survey also found that on average, 9 out of 10 respondents were willing to pay more for locally sourced food. But this shift in thinking isn't just occurring in America. The results of Nielsen's 2014 Global Survey on Corporate Social Responsibility shows that 55% of online consumers across 60 countries are willing to pay more for items and services from businesses that are committed to positive social and environmental impact. Let's take a more in-depth look at which parts of the globe from this survey are more sustainably minded. Of the 60 countries surveyed, the Asia-Pacific region leads the way, with 64% of their inhabitants willing to pay more for sustainable goods and services. Latin America follows closely behind at 63%. The Middle East and Asian regions also came in at 63%. 42% of North American respondents surveyed said that they would pay more, and Europe trails at 40%. Why do different parts of the world have different responses? One of the reasons countries have differing perceptions and actions in regard to environmental impact and sustainability is because of policy and how it is implemented. Let's take a look at these different perceptions and how we have measured them in the past. The first published Global Green Economy Index in 2010 was based on the belief that the environment, climate change, and low carbon and green growth would rapidly become important issues for national law and policymakers, as well as the global reputation of countries. The report reads, as we went to press, 2,646 events in nearly 162 countries mobilized pressure on over 100 world leaders gathered in New York at the United Nations to take substantive and binding action on climate change. The link between these issues and the reputation of leaders and nation-states is more vivid today than ever before. This report has been conducted a few times since its inception in 2010, and with it, the results become more and more pleasing. The report in 2012 assessed 27 countries. The report released in 2014 included 60 countries all around the globe. The Global Green Economy Index report assessed nations on every continent. It was found that Scandinavian countries, along with Germany, were clear leaders of sustainability. When looking at actual performance, actually implementing environmental changes instead of merely talking about them, Sweden and Norway again headed the list respectively. Costa Rica came in third inside the top 15 countries for the first time since this report has been published. Germany and Denmark came in fourth and fifth. The countries in the rear included Poland, Vietnam, Qatar, and Senegal. China came in a measly 55th place on the list, and America was listed at 28. It is interesting to see the top 10 greenest cities too, and which countries they reside in. 4 of the 10 greenest cities were in Scandinavia, but that shouldn't be too much of a shock. Copenhagen, Denmark, came in first place, followed by Stockholm, Sweden in third, and Helsinki, Finland, and Oslo, Norway in 9th and 10th respectively. Amsterdam, Netherlands was hailed as the second greenest city in the world. Vancouver, Canada made the list coming in at 4th place, while London, England, and Berlin, Germany came in the 5th and 6th place. Singapore, Malaysia was last but not least on the list of greenest global cities, and New York came in 9th place. Sweden is the most sustainable country in the world, at least in 2015, a ranking this Nordic country earned for its use of renewable energy sources and low carbon dioxide emissions, as well as social and governance practices such as labor participation, education, and institutional framework, according to a report by sustainability investment firm Robbie Kosum. A report released last year in Doha by the World Energy Council urged governments to design long-term energy policies and encourage research and development in energy technology. It said developed countries such as Sweden, Switzerland, and Canada are the closest to achieving sustainable energy systems. Neither the US nor the UK made the top 10 list. Sustainable energy systems include renewable sources of energy, such as biomass, wind, hydro, and solar power. In Sweden, the car company Volvo unveiled a plug-in bus system, which is said to reduce fuel consumption by 75%. This means less burning of fossil fuels and less CO2. This technology will also reduce carbon dioxide by 75 to 80% when compared with the now present diesel buses, and reduce total energy consumption by around 60%. These changes are being made because the citizens of Sweden demand change, and their leaders are sustainably minded when it comes to policy decisions. Think about how much we could learn from a country like that. Regardless of country, environmental awareness has been growing for about a century, but has picked up momentum in the past decade. We can only hope that this trend of environmental awareness will continue into the future. Increasing levels of environmental awareness and involvement can only be a good thing. Sustainability and renewable resources. Sustainability is defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations. Sustainability is made up of 3 parts: economic, social, and environmental. The social dimension refers to housing, education, healthcare, and other aspects that contribute to one's quality of life. While the economic dimension speaks to a viable local economy, with job creation and incoming revenue not dependent on high consumption or population growth. The environmental dimension refers to maintaining the quality of the environment and the idea of creating a more resilient city that can withstand natural disasters. Sustainability is based on a simple principle. Everything we need for our survival and well-being depends on our natural environment, either directly or indirectly. In order to become more sustainable every day, we need to consider the impact everything we do has on the environment. Our natural resources that can be found in the environment, such as coal, ore, and natural gas, are dwindling. Fresh water is running out, and we have a limited supply of trees. We use and modify natural resources to benefit us, with little regard for the future generations. A renewable resource is one that can be recycled and made again, or reused. Biomass, power from the burning of natural materials such as plants, wood, and biological waste, solar power from the sun, and water, which only has a limited supply on Earth, are all examples of renewable resources. We can plant more trees, and hopefully the sun will not burn out within our lifetime. By utilizing renewable resources, we are taking some stress off the Earth. But with the overuse of natural resources, we produce more CO2, which then results in an increase of global warming. Which would you choose? The convenient way or the sustainable way? Is it global warming or climate change? According to the EPA, global warming refers to the recent and ongoing increase in the average global temperature. This increase is mostly caused by the amassed amounts of greenhouse gases or CO2 in the atmosphere. The CO2 or greenhouse gases get trapped within the atmosphere. Some CO2 in the atmosphere isn't a bad thing. It allows for heat and sunlight to travel to Earth and helps keep Earth from going into a deep freeze period. But we can have too much CO2. If there is too much CO2 in the atmosphere, Earth heats up considerably over time, along with a plethora of other adverse effects. For many, a warmer temperature is welcome, but some do not realize the negative effects such warming will have on life as they know it. Is climate change the same as global warming? Global warming causes a change in climate patterns, including increasing the frequency of large weather events, such as hurricanes and floods. Climate change includes extreme changes in temperature, precipitation, and wind pattern. These changes may be a little more subtle, occurring slowly over decades. The answer is no. Climate change and global warming are not the same. In fact, you may even say that global warming increases or affects climate change. One cannot exist without the other. Natural and human causes. What causes global warming and climate change? Are humans all to blame? How much of these temperature shifts are natural? The Earth is warming. Earth's average temperature has risen by 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit over the past century and is projected to rise another 0.5 to 8.6 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 100 years. Although 0.5 degrees of warming may not seem like a lot, the consequences are huge. Small changes in the average temperature of the planet can translate to large and potentially dangerous shifts in climate and weather. The Earth goes through periods of natural cycles of warming and lowering average temperatures. Ice ages have happened as a result of these natural temperature fluctuations. Before the Industrial Revolution, the climate of Earth was unaffected by human activity. During that time, any global warming was mostly due to variations in sunlight and the solar energy that reaches Earth. Less sun equals less warmth. Volcanic eruptions also shoot particles into the atmosphere, which also had a hand in increasing greenhouse gases and altering the climate of the planet. Although these natural causes are still relevant to global warming today, they are not enough to explain the rapid warming Earth has been experiencing over the last few decades or so. NASA and its scientists have the technology and the data to create climate models and simulations based on scientific data found in rocks, lava, soils, and other natural elements. These models also take into account human as well as natural activities by processing information gathered from satellites and monitoring instruments on Earth's surface. They have found that the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere prior to the 1950s were primarily caused by volcanic eruptions and changes in solar energy. After that, the warming trend can only be explained by adding in the human element. Although volcanoes remain active and changing periods of sunlight occurs around the globe, the amount of carbon dioxide they emit is relatively small compared to emissions from humans. According to NASA, volcanoes emit, on average, between 130 and 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. And the NASA satellites that monitor the solar output from the sun tells us that the total solar energy varies greatly over an 11-year period. This does still not explain the dramatic increase of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. On average, humans release more than 100 times more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than what is generated from volcanic activity. According to the EPA, CO2 emissions in the United States and other developed nations are projected to grow by about 1.5% between 2005 and 2020. Thankfully, there are some ways to combat this. Because of increasing carbon footprints, humans are contributing to global climate change in an increasingly fast way. We are using more CO2 than ever before. Our human activities are altering the carbon cycle, both by adding more CO2 to the atmosphere and by influencing the ability of natural sinks, like forests, to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. By cutting down trees, we are taking away one of nature's natural abilities to fight global warming. While CO2 emissions come from a variety of natural sources, such as decomposition of decaying wood, and release from the oceans, which only contribute a relatively small amount of CO2, human-related emissions are responsible for the vast majority of the carbon dioxide increase that has occurred in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution. In 2011, fossil fuel usage, created by burning coal, oil, and natural gas, created 33.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions worldwide. According to the Carbon Dioxide Information Analysis Center, 2011 global fossil fuel carbon emissions reached an estimated 9,449 million metric tons of carbon, which represents an all-time high and a 3.4% increase over 2010 emissions. Since 1751, approximately 374 billion metric tons of carbon have been released into the atmosphere from the consumption of fossil fuels and cement production. It is quite shocking to find out that half of these fossil fuel CO2 emissions have occurred since the mid-1980s. Each and every year, we are increasing our carbon emissions and releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere. Data shows that between 2000 and 2010, carbon emissions have steadily increased on average of 3.2% each year. This may not seem like a lot, but each year they compound on one another. Maybe being more sustainably minded has paid off. However, scientists predict that for the first time since the early 2000s, carbon emissions may drop around 0.6%. The main human activity that emits CO2 is the burning of fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, and oil, for energy and transportation. Many other processes also emit CO2, such as certain industrial processes and land use changes. However, fossil fuels are responsible for most CO2 in the atmosphere. Coal is responsible for 43% of carbon dioxide emissions from fuel combustion, 36% is produced by oil, and 20% from natural gas. What do we use these fuels for? Natural gas is used to generate electricity, which is a significant source of energy all over the globe. Electricity is used to light homes, charge laptops and cell phones, and heating water. Burning fossil fuels for electricity usage accounted for about 37% of total US CO2 emissions and 31% of total US greenhouse gas emissions in 2013. The combustion of fossil fuels, such as gasoline and diesel fuel, to transport people and goods around the globe is the second largest source of CO2 emissions, accounting for about 31% of total US CO2 emissions and 26% of total US greenhouse gas emissions in 2013. This category includes transportation sources such as vehicles, air travel, marine transportation, and rail. Fossil fuels are also used to produce and transport our food. Food miles are referred to the amount of resources it takes to get the food item from the producer to the consumer. Local food, often defined as food that travels less than 100 miles to get to the consumer, has less food miles associated with them. Buying produce, honey, and other fresh food from a farmer's market or farm stand has less of an environmental impact than buying lettuce and other vegetables at the grocery store. In order to calculate food miles, take into consideration the energy it took to produce the food, prepare and ship it, and package it in stores. How our food is grown, stored, transported, processed and cooked can all influence how it impacts climate change and the environment. Why does our food travel so far to get to our plates? For a few reasons. We like to buy seasonally fresh food all year round. Strawberries' growing season is traditionally in early summer, yet we see them in the store even through the winter. To get strawberries in the winter, they are imported and shipped from thousands of miles away and grown in greenhouses. This all takes more energy, gas, and natural resources. Another reason why food travels so far to get to the consumer is because we are willing to travel farther for our food. People are willing to travel out of their way to shop at a certain store, maybe because it has a certain product they like, or because it is organic. If you enjoy ready-made foods such as frozen pizzas, pre-made salads, and canned soups, those have more food miles associated with them as well. The ingredients travel all over the country from factory to come together and make the pre-packaged food. Then it gets shipped to the stores. We enjoy the convenience of our food, but at what cost? Buying local foods is better for our health. The shorter the time between the farm and our table, the less likely it is that nutrients will be lost. Food imported from far away is older and has traveled on trucks or planes and sat in warehouses before it gets to you. Supporting local food is also good for the environment. Well-managed farms provide habitats for wildlife, conserve soil, sequester carbon, and help clean our waters. So next time you're at the grocery store, will you stop and think about where our food comes from? We create carbon emissions from almost anything we do. The use of fossil fuels is one of the leading causes of human emissions. From driving a car and buying and eating meat, to turning lights in our home on and off, and even printing paper creates CO2. The good news is that there is a way to slow down our carbon emissions, which we will cover later in this documentary. But first, let's explore what will happen if we do not take action to combat climate change. What has already happened as a result of climate change? We've talked about how humans harm the environment and contribute to CO2 in the atmosphere. By now you realize, hopefully, that something must be done. But what will happen if we do not take action? If society continues to emit these levels of carbon dioxide with little regard for their consequences, Earth will be in for a big shock. Effects have already started to take place. The consequences of changing the natural atmospheric greenhouse are sometimes difficult to predict, but we believe these effects will happen in one form or another. The Earth will warm. Some parts of the globe will have more increased temperatures than others, but as a whole, the Earth will warm. Maybe you find this desirable. Who doesn't enjoy warmer weather? Well, this warmer weather comes with many big consequences. The warmer weather may lead to increased rainfall and more evaporation of condensation. This will cause some areas to become wetter, while others become drier. This adversely affects the way of life people are accustomed to. Wetter or drier climates alike will affect the crop production and its harvest, which in turn affects the ability to feed the people of that region. Drier weather may bring sandstorms, and wetter weather may bring floods. Homes may be destroyed, and people may have to relocate to find a more livable environment. An increase in temperature by just a few degrees will definitely affect the oceans. Glaciers will melt, causing thousands of animals to lose their habitats. Sea levels will also rise, affecting hundreds of thousands of homes, fields, and habitats. Major flooding will occur and crops will drown due to the rise in sea level everywhere. Oceanic water will become more acidic, causing the habitat for thousands of sea creatures to become unlivable. Weather patterns will be severely altered as a result of warming core temperatures. Storms will become stronger and more frequent. Hurricanes will demolish hundreds of homes and lives. 100 million people risk coastal flooding. Wildfires will spread through the dry grass under the scorching sun. Many humans and animals will die from unexpected heat waves and droughts. Our supply of potable water may decrease, causing millions of people to be without clean drinking water. Global warming and climate change will also adversely affect human health. In a recent study by Lancet and University College London Institute for Global Health Commission, climate change is the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. Although vector-borne diseases, infections transferred through an insect or arthropod bite, such as mosquitoes, ticks and spiders, will continue to cause death, it is expected that death, especially among elderly people, will increase because of heat waves, which are the indirect effects of climate change on water, food security, and extreme climatic events. All of these are consequences of global warming and climate change. For some effects, it may be too late to stop the chain of motion, but for others, the damage has already been done. The sooner we change our behavior and our thinking, the better. In this day and age, it is extremely important to get the future generation involved in nature and expose them to environmental education. Quite simply, environmental education is the study of nature and environmental issues, both global and local. From nature walks to science experiments, environmental education can be fun and engaging for children and adults. In a survey conducted in 2000, it was found that 2/3 of the public failed a basic environmental quiz, and 88% failed a basic energy quiz. Studies consistently show that the United States public suffers from a tremendous environmental literacy gap, and it is increasing. In one study, it was found that 45 million Americans believe the ocean is a form of fresh water, and 130 million Americans think that hydropower is America's top energy source. Given the state of our planet, this lack of awareness and general knowledge is appalling and unacceptable. One way that we can combat this is through environmental education. More and more children are spending most of their time indoors in front of a screen. This movement indoors is not benign. There are health costs associated with this shift. Attention difficulties, hyperactivity, childhood obesity, and diminished use of senses. Additionally, if children are detached from nature, how will they learn about, understand, and value nature? How will the next generation care about the land and be stewards of its resources? Raising an environmentally literate generation of problem solvers will help ensure that tomorrow's decision makers are prepared for the challenges they will likely face. Studies have shown environmental education engages students in learning, raising test scores, and encouraging youth to pursue careers in environmental and natural resources. Hopefully, we will see a shift in environmental awareness soon. Another way we can attempt to offset carbon emissions is by planting trees. Forests act as a natural carbon sink, absorbing more CO2 than they expel. A tree can absorb as much as 48 pounds of carbon dioxide per year and sequester or store 1 ton of carbon dioxide by the time it reaches 40 years old. Isn't that amazing? The Arbor Day Alliance found that 100 metric tons of CO2 can accumulate in 1 acre of forest over a period of time. While each person on Earth generates around 2.3 tons of CO2 per year, the carbon footprint of 18 average Americans can be neutralized by 1 acre of hardwood trees. A simple solution to combat our CO2 emissions is just to plant more trees. You probably already know that there are other forms of energy, such as wind power, hydropower, geothermal, biomass, or solar power. These forms of energy are more sustainable because they do not require fossil fuels. Wind, sun, and wave power are in great supply and are replenishable. Most renewable sources of energy have little to no impact on the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. According to data aggregated by the International Panel on Climate Change, global warming emissions associated with renewable energy, including manufacturing, installation, operation, and maintenance, are minimal. Wind, solar, and hydropower systems generate electricity with no linked air pollution or CO2 emissions. While geothermal and biomass energy systems emit some air pollutants, total air emissions are generally much lower than those of non-renewable resources, such as those of gas and coal. In 2012, NREL found that together, renewable energy sources have the possibility and potential to supply over 482,000 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity every year. This amount is 118 times the amount of electricity the United States currently consumes. However, it is important to note that not all of this potential can be tapped due to conflicting land use needs, the higher short-term costs of those resources, constraints on ramping up their use, such as limits on transmission capacity, barriers to public acceptance, and other hurdles. Hopefully, we will see an increase of renewable and sustainable energy sources in our lifetime. One of the most promising ways to combat the effects of global warming is through sustainable development, the ongoing development that meets future needs of people without compromising future generations' ability to meet their needs. Building skyscrapers, highways, and towering McMansions left and right emit 39% of the CO2 emissions in the United States. Shipping materials to the worksite, fueling trucks and other machines, and producing the materials all take a toll on the environment by releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Tiny houses are a wonderful way to get involved in the sustainability movement. The tiny house movement can be traced back as far as Henry David Thoreau and the publication of his book, Walden. In Walden, Thoreau writes, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." Thoreau's desire to live simply has continued into today's society, with more and more Americans downsizing their homes and living more minimally. In today's terms, it is a social movement where people are consciously choosing to downsize their living space. The typical American home is around 2,600 square feet, whereas the typical tiny house is between 100 and 400 square feet. They tend to be this small so they can be hauled with a truck. Tiny houses come in all shapes and sizes, but they all enable simpler living in a smaller, more efficient space. Less house means less building materials, less transportation, and less carbon dioxide. Could you live in a tiny house? What will happen to all of your stuff? It is important to think about the implications downsizing will have. Becoming attached to your things can make it a difficult transition, and tiny houses are not for everyone. If you can't picture yourself in a tiny house, what about just downsizing your home and your belongings? Having less things can be very freeing. A lot of this comes down to consumption. If we consume less, we have less. Less things, less attachments, and less carbon dioxide emissions. Consuming less meat and more plant-based foods will help offset some CO2 emissions produced by cutting down transportation and importation of meat. Ride your bike to work or start carpooling. Buy things second-hand and make homemade gifts instead of being part of the crazy Christmas shopping in the winter months. Use less electricity in the summer and enjoy natural sunlight. Taking a good look at your life, your surroundings, your things, and your behaviors is a great way to starting your journey to a more sustainable life and mitigating CO2 emissions. The more you educate yourself, the more aware you will become. Awareness can only help you guide more people toward becoming more sustainable and living a less wasteful life. The important thing is not to be discouraged. It is easy to look at the facts and become downhearted. It would be simple to give up and continue to use non-sustainable energy forms, continuing our life as we currently are. Take some time to think about where your food comes from and how your carbon consumption affects others and the world around you. We must take care of the earth so it can continue to be a home for us and its many animals, plants, and insects. Without Earth, we cannot exist. It can all be summed up in a quote by author Margaret Mead. We won't have a society if we destroy the environment. So what are you waiting for? Will you be part of the change?